Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to the three distinguished panelists. So we have now come to the last session of today's events, the Malaysian Economic Summit 2021. So I must say that all of you agree with me that this is one of the most important sessions for today's summit. So as we all know that the MSME, the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, form close to 99% of total businesses in Malaysia. So they form the backbone of the economy. So this is the official statistics that we can find on SME Corp website, Department of Statistics. But of course, unofficially, there's still these informal businesses. Now, those that don't register with SSM, there are millions of them who operates with just a business license issued by the local councils. So in totality, there are many SME businesses who has been hit hard since the pandemic, the outbreak last year at the MCO, the 1.0 started March last year. So in this session, we are going to listen to three very distinguished panelists, Mr. Koong, Dato Azlin, and Associate Professor Dr. Sohail. So to actually share their thoughts and the methods they in their view, they can help the government, the institution, and the MSMEs themselves to further prepare them how to ride through this pandemic, this difficult situation, and also into the new future. So, okay, so without further ado, I'm going to actually pass this the stage to Mr. Koong, Dato Azlin, and also Professor. Mr. Koong, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, I would like to share the screen first. So you can see my screen, is it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I would like to share some of the, because before we talk about these restructuring solutions for the SME, I would like to share with you some concern, the survey feedback, and then some of the assistance programs and the way forward. Let's look at this ACCIM survey on the businesses. So when we ask them, let's say end of last year and beginning of this year, what is the most concern? Then you look at it, the most is a high operating cost. Definitely, it's a cash flow problems. Look at the 3C. That means what I meant is the cost, credit, and the cash flow. 74.4% they have these three problems. The cost escalating, and then it's the difficult to get credit. Maybe perhaps later we'll discuss about this one. And then facing a cash flow problem because as it is now EMCO, there's no sales. You can't operate, no sales, there's no cash flow. And then look at this, 48.3%, definitely talking about the high operating cost. And then there's a hoping of 80.7% the current cash flow level. They can't even prolong up to 6 months. This, I think you need the banking help. Look at this. If you have a problem, the government stimulus packages from last year, former Prime Minister Tun M from 27th of February 2020 up to now, the Pemulih, we have 8 plus 1, 9 packages. If you plus the 2021 budget, that is the biggest budget in Malaysia, 322.5 B. It's about 10 packages over here. So I think last year, talking about this is 305 B, and then this year is 225 B. This one is almost 1/3, 33 to 35% of our GDP to help the businesses and the rakyat in that sense. Look at this assistance program. As I mentioned, the first slide, this survey, the most concern of the businesses, even though the rakyat actually is a cash flow, it's the income that lost this cash flow. If we can save the business, as I mentioned just now, the SME, I think we can save what? Save two things. There is a business will be there, and then we also save the employee, in terms of lower retrenchment, all those things. What are the three things that the most helping the businesses from the last year 2020 18th of March till now. That is a moratorium. You do not need to repay now 6 months of the moratorium loan, either car loan, housing loan, or business loan. And then wage subsidy program help the most to retain the worker. If not, I think around 2.7 and 3 million workers would have been retrenched. And then there's a soft loan and grant. Soft loan from the respective commercial bank and the government agency like SME Corp and the MITM, and some grant as well from the MTech and MITA as well. All these things is helping our SME. Last but not least, you look at this resilient of SME, the way forward, I reckon later we'll discuss more in respect of this one. That means we must have a short-term to medium-term budget. In order, which one the fixed cost we have to reduce and then maximize the use of the government assistance programs, as I just mentioned just now. The second, definitely, earlier session, you talk about digitalizations, the new norm. We need to adopt this and then to promote the working practices towards this. Third, to review our products and services, which one is high cost, we should get rid of it, and then which products can generate cash flow. No point for you to keep on selling without collecting the cash. You become a bad debt, And then now RCEP in place. Are we looking for the export market? Let's say now preparations, then go towards the post-pandemic. Last but not least, the productivity analysis in respect of the staff, machines, and methodology are we going to in place. So all these things, I think, is a resilience of the SME before we talk about whatever restructuring as we are going through. So all this, I think, is the effectiveness and the efficiency, in that respect, So, Wayne, I think I put it back to you now. My a bit of presentations for my start at this. Okay, back to you now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koong, for your very concise PowerPoint to show all the stimulus packages since last year that the government has given to the SMEs. So, ladies and gentlemen, to all the audience, so just to share with you that once all the three panelists have shared their thoughts, so I will then open up the floors to any one of you who might have some keen question that you want to ask them. Mr. Koong, just very quickly before I invite Dato Azlin to share her thoughts.
Yeah.
In ACCCIM survey, right, since the last year, it has been many times mentioned that the SME will not have enough cash flow to last through a few months. But
That's right.
MCO 1.0 until now is already close to 18 months. So can you just very briefly update the audience and us here? So how have this SME been coping?
Because if it is not the assistance program, like just now what I mentioned, the 3 assistance programs, I think is very helpful to the businesses, especially the SME, moratorium, the delay, because to me, most of the company fund is go through what? Salary payment and then rental payment, some even monthly taxation payment. Another one is nothing to do with profit and loss account. That is a repayment of their debts, either this business loan or the personal is a car loan and a housing loan. Let's talk about the mid-tier company. Mid-tier company, their loan is not few 100,000. It's a couple of millions. They said the repayments will comes to 40,000, 50,000. If they do not need to repay in terms of just 6 months, it will save them millions. So I think because of these programs, they sail through, up to now. And then those tourism businesses, they continue to enjoy this moratorium. Up to now, the Bermulay also mentions 6 months from this July onward for this moratorium. So I think it's a great help. If not, I don't think so the SME can survive. That means more than 6 months. Because our survey, it mentions 80.7% that do not have the cash flow reserve more than 6 months. If they say more than 6 months, I think those are very cash rich in that sense. Okay, Wayne? Thanks
for sharing on this important point. So we have a a good notes here from an audience, Puan or Che Sharifa. She has actually highlighted to me and the panelists that SME Corp has launched this My Assist MSME. So the website address is actually myasist.msme.gov.my. This is the portal by SME Corp, and there are many, many great tools to help the SMEs to actually to facilitate them and to help them to improve their business operation, business matching and all. And just for over 9 days during the SME Week 2021, Che Sharifa point out again, the MSME facilitated business matching that involved almost 250 companies has managed to facilitate more than 10 million sales potentially. That's good. Thanks very much, Che Sharifa, for bringing this up to share with the audience. So with this, now we move to the next panelist, Dato Azlin. She's the chairwoman, Dato Azlin of National Federation of Women Entrepreneurs. So Dato Azlin, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Wayne. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all the distinguished participants and my esteemed panelists in this session. So I think here I'll share with you some of my thoughts, from the ground, from the point of view of the first M in the MSME, which is from the micro enterprises. I'm very happy actually to see that now this we are using MSME more than SMEs, because actually the first M is very important, because as we all know, that the first M, which is the micro enterprises, I mean that comes up to about 80% of the SMEs, and comes up to about nearly 700,000 of enterprises there. So I think in any discussion of SMEs, it's very important to look into these issues and challenges for the micros, right? And I'm very happy to share some thoughts with you today, all right, based on the ground, because as Wayne said, I'm the chairman of the National Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association Malaysia, and we work together with all the women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general. So actually, just to point out that one alarming thing about an announcement last week that said that from the Minister of MEDEC, that said that out of that if the lockdown continues, right, then about 580,000 or 49% of MSMEs are going to be closed down, because it's been a long time anyway since many of us are affected. So I think there's a very alarming figure, and of course from that figure you can, as I said earlier, most of the SMEs are micros anyway. So a lot of micros are going to be affected. But nevertheless, I think when we discuss about solutions, for MSMEs in these current times, we can't put everyone together in the same place. I mean, no, the one size doesn't fit all, right? Because we all have different problems. The micros, the small and the mediums have different problems. And although we are in the same storm, they say when in different boats, some are smaller boats and to bigger boats and all. But although we're all in the same storm. So when we talk about the solutions, for the micros, I think also we need to break them down, because again, it's not one solution fits all the micro enterprises. Because if we look at what's happened for the last 1.5 years, right? I mean, the micros are divided into, some micros have had to close shop during MCO1. Right, about 30% had to close down, even in MCO1, because of lack of resources, lack of cash flow and all that, and then we have the micros who have been unable to operate, since MCO1. We're talking about, the industries like, tourism, the hotels, the spa, the event organizers and all that. They have not really been able to do any kind of business ever since MCO1. Then the next category is that we have the micros, which have sustained for this 1.5 years, which is very good. Right, maybe due to the fact that there's demand for their product. Maybe they've had a bit more cash flow to sustain. But Alhamdulillah, I mean, there are some which are okay until now. But again, right, it's been 1.5 years. So however much cash flow they have, I think it's depleting fast, right? So we need to address and try to sustain them to make sure that they ride the storm. After all, they've come out well for this 1.5 years. And the next category is the micros. They pivoted to other businesses. They've pivoted to other businesses and gone to, their online platforms, digitalization, and all that. So when we think about solutions, for the micros, right, we need to see which category is it that we are trying to address here. All right, for those people who have closed shop and have not pivoted to anything else, right, and who have not found any other business opportunities to go into. So what do we do with them, right? What do we do with those people who because of the industry that they're in, they're not able to operate anyway? So what plans have we got for them, right? Because when it comes to travel agencies and tourism and events, right, how do they plan to reactivate back their business, which even if we offer them whatever it is, digitalization or any platforms, whatever it is, right? I think what's important is the product. The product is also very important. And so now I think one of the challenge is that some of these businesses are not able to plan forward. We don't even know now, when, the phase, 2, 3 or whatever it is that allows us to open all the sectors for us to be able to go on to do some of the businesses. Like I'm sure that Spa has got a very serious issue of not being able to open since MCO1, and they're in this negative list. That this allows them to be open anyway. So what happens to them? And they have lots of people who are, there's a lot of micros which are in spas. All right. So the solution, I think, when we think of how to address this, we got to think about the different categories of these micros and how to bring them forward. But I think it's important to help the micro enterprises which are now still surviving, right, but coming to the end of their resources. I think it's important to save them and make sure that they sustain and survive, until in a few months, until hopefully the economy is opened up fully and they can get back their normal business. And I think maybe I just continue a little bit, Wayne, about the solution when it comes to financial solutions. Because a lot of micro enterprises are underbanked anyway. They have the bank accounts, but they're not normally they don't normally have access to the the normal financing facilities given by banks. So in this respect, that's why it is very important for the DFIs and for the government to assist them. But if we see all the assistance that's been given by the government, of course, it's good. There have been many assistance by the government to the micro enterprises. But as a way of conducting business and enhancing the cash flow, when you refer back to that 4 categories, right, is of course not enough, right, to sustain them through these times, right. And maybe as the last note, I'll just mention about the informal sector. We've had problems with that too, right, because throughout this MCO, when it comes to stimulus packages and all that, we found that the informal sector, which includes the informal businesses, right, they are not able to take advantage of a lot of the packages given by the government, because it required the criteria of being registered with SSM, with PEKESO, with LHDN and everything. So I think something needs to be done, about the informal businesses, right? In a sense that maybe SSM should do a huge campaign, to register, all these informal businesses, so that we don't have this problem again in the future. And also, I think it's a good thing because then we can capture a more accurate database when it comes to our entrepreneurs in business, and also it will make sure that they govern their businesses more properly in that sense. So I'll end on that way, and I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Dato Azlin. So I'm very grateful that you mentioned about informal sectors, because as our count here unofficially, there are millions of them, right?
Yeah,
so
it's about 1.4 million, right?
Yeah, I think it can be even more than that now, because Dato Azlin, with more unemployment, so many people who can't find a job, they have no choice but to start a small business themselves. So even though just for the benefits of audience, even those that the hawkers and the rest are allowed to operate during this period of time. So my personal experience is they are also facing a very difficult time because of the domino effects. Like during the last year, so when I do a reporting in East Coast, the Cheratin, so the tourism belt, just because the hotel sectors are not allowed to operate, no tourists from overseas are allowed to enter the country, and cross borders, even within Malaysia, are not allowed until today. So it's typically even the informal sectors, the hawkers, like the penjaja, they can't do much, right? Those they sell ice creams, those they sell the pisang goreng. Who is that to sell to? Because it's always the tourists during the weekends or during the peak holiday season that these businesses they benefited the most. So the whole East Coast, the tourism belt, the East Cheratins and the rest it was so quiet until today. So, and by now I'm sure all the audience and the panelists, I'm sure that our eyes were busy looking at our handphone because of the power of social media. Today's another record-breaking days, 11,000. The COVID case, so it's very, very scary, right? Even with MCO 3.0, even with EMCO. So this will further impact the economy and the businesses. So with that, Prof, what do you have got to say? And I'm sure you got some very good methods to share. Right? Okay, can we hear from you, Prof?
Hello. No. Hello. Yeah. Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum to Tan and good evening to respective panels and participants. Thank you to KSI Strategic for inviting me. Okay. Now, there are two main problems over here, two big problems. Number one is operational problems for the SMEs. Operational problems, okay, in terms of the daily operations, which is being disrupted because of the COVID. And then supply chain. Supply chain is also another important aspect. Okay. And then number two, we see the research that was being done was that financial. Also, the financial problem is, number one, is basically cash flow problems. Okay. And then access to stimulus package, okay, access to stimulus package by the government, okay, and bankruptcy been rising among SMEs, okay. Now, there is one statistics which is quite alarming. Bank Negara Malaysia statistics, second 2020, debt to equity ratio is 46%. Debt to equity ratio is 46% and profit margin is only 5.7%. This is quite alarming for the SMEs. And most of the impacts of these immediate shocks is unavoidable.
Prof, can you hear us? Okay, while waiting for Professor to get his reconnection. So I have seen there's a question from an audience from this Shai here. His question is to all the three panelists, what do you think? Because this wage subsidy, which is very, very helpful to help the SMEs to ride through these difficult times. But from the first wage subsidy until now, it has always been only valid for the local Malaysian employees. Should it now be extended to foreign workers? Then must they pay only so to be able to entitle to this. Mr. Koong and Dato Azlin, what's your point on this?
Yeah, okay, Wayne. In respect of this one, definitely when we compute the number of employees, it will include these foreign workers, you know. But the benefit will be enjoyed by the local first, you know. I think this is because we don't want the locals to be retrenched in such a way, you know, because we need to help the local first, you know. No doubt, if there is access fund, I think it's good to help the foreign workers as well, you know, in that respect. However, I think the right policy in this helping the local worker, I think is ultimate importance to help the local first. That is my viewpoint. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put you on spot, Mr. Koong. Yes. Okay, it's very important to help the locals. We all reckon that fact, right? So once the locals are all being helped, should this program be extended to foreign workers? Because as we all know that we employ, especially the manufacturing and construction sectors, employ large amount of foreign workers, right? So this, I'm sure these sectors, they felt a bit not fair. So what do you say? Yes or no?
Definitely, if there is access fund, definitely to help the foreign worker in respect of this wage subsidy is the most is complete solutions, you know. But a lot of programs out there we see is helping business to retain the worker. When they help the business, especially like moratorium and then TRRF, all this loan in this for the SME, it will help them to retain the foreign worker as well. Because the foreign worker, a lot is maybe not monthly wage, you know, the wages, and maybe it's a contract wages, all those things. It's quite difficult to compute their wages, you know. So I think helping the business is also helping the foreign worker to retain the foreign worker in that sense. Yeah.
Right. Dato Azlin, do you have further points to add to that? This wage subsidy program, should it be also extended to firms that employ many foreign workers?
No, I agree with what Mr. Koong said, you know, that of course priority should be, you know, to our local workers. And if there is excess funds, then maybe we should look into that. Because, but I believe that even if there was excess funds, you know, Mr. Koong, it can be used for other things, you know, and you know, to help our local...
To help the business first.
Yeah, the business first. I agree.
Right. So, we have Prof back.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption.
No worries at all. Yeah, we are glad to have you back. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, a survey was being done on 23,400 companies. Now, report 71%, just like what the other participants said, 71% just maintain 6 months cash flow. This is inadequate for 6%. Also, we see Prihatin, which is being introduced by the government. The first package was 3.3 billion. Second package was 10 billion. But then we see from the SMEs, what happened was that many documentations were needed for the loans to be approved. Therefore, maybe the documentation process can be cut down over there. Okay. Now, the other impact of COVID for SMEs is that we all know that it has that negative operational effects. Okay. The other important aspects is supply chain is being affected. Okay. Supply chain is being affected because many premises have to be closed. Many premises have to be closed. Okay. And then we import a lot. We import from China especially. Okay. A lot. It is put on hold. Okay. Flow of international of raw materials is being put on hold. Therefore, company cannot resume their production. Production is being stalled over here. Okay, there was the complaints most of the retailers are having about the SMEs. Okay. Now the next one is that there are cash flow imbalances. This happened to most of the SMEs. Okay, this is the major problem also, where there is cash flow imbalances, and the 6 months are given by the government with the higher documentation process makes it much more harder for them. Okay, even though yes, the government do help, but once when you look from the SMEs, it's like with the high documentation, so it takes them a lot of time before they do get the funds. Okay. Now, the next aspect is their gearing ratio is high. Okay. The size of monthly loan repayment is high. Okay. Now, we have to understand something. Okay. The access to the stimulus package is 6 months loan moratorium does not include financial lease. Companies still have to pay for financial lease. Okay, it does not include the financial lease, and the fixed cost aspects of machineries for the SMEs is high. Okay, so it's very hard for them to mismatch between the moratorium and the financial lease with the high fixed costs that they are having. Okay, now the next one is that bankruptcy crisis is high. Okay, we have a high record of bankruptcy crisis for the past 1 year over here. Okay, now we see that just like what the other panelists have been saying. Okay, they must embrace more innovative products, better marketing platforms to remain resilient in this era. Okay. Now over here, what we see is that there are basically around 8 or 9 strategies that we can use for SMEs. Most of them, the government have been implementing these strategies, okay, to SMEs. Okay. Now, what is it that we can do for the SMEs? Okay. Number one is SMEs need to divert their business towards more sales and marketing channels to online forms. Like we see now, Shopee or Lazada, they have to go more on online. Okay. Now, the next one is that they have to repackage their products into smaller version. They have to repackage their products into smaller version, items with lower pricing. Okay, because there are many unemployed people out there. Okay, with a lower salary now. Okay, so most of the SMEs, they have to repackage their products, their pricing. Okay, now the next one, which is interesting, which is being spoken by the previous panels, is that employing fintech companies, okay, for a focused business solution. That was what Mr. Azmi said, that Europe, they have these hidden firms. Yes, was in the study also. Europe have these hidden firms, where these hidden firms, they are successful. Okay, they are successful because number one, they have the resources. They are very successful in terms of fintech. They employ very high fintech technology, fintech companies to overcome during this COVID area. Okay. Now, the next one that was being spoken by one of the panelists before this, okay, which says that onboard technology. Onboard technology, we want to see a matching between the financing from the banks, okay, to these SMEs. Loans have to be restructured at a lower interest rates, number one, and at a longer time frame. Okay, extend the time frame for us to help these SMEs. Okay, this is very important. Maybe the government can introduce certain policies in the repackaging of loans to the SMEs. Okay. Now the next one, SMEs, is that they have to cut their levels. They have to cut their levels or their branches. Okay, so that the customer, they are very near to the customer. Okay, between the boss and the subordinates will be much more nearer with each other. That means we want to be less bureaucracy over here. This is very important. That means there must be a restructuring of the hierarchical systems in the organization. Okay. Now, the next one that we see is that increasing networking. This is very important. Increasing networking, encourage SME, okay, sales agent at states. We have many states to recruit sub-agents, okay, so that the SMEs can sell their products. We have Kelantan, we have Terengganu, we have Johor. So we create sub-agents to sell the products. This is effective, okay? And this is being done by the European companies. They create a lot of sub-agents, okay? Now, the next one is that this one is unavoidable. Again, there must be something like a rescue strategy. Okay, under this rescue strategy, debt and renegotiation agreement, okay, between banks and SMEs have to be done. Okay, they have to sit down again. They have to renegotiate their loans. Okay, to reduce the cash flow imbalances. There's a lot of cash flow imbalances which is happening at the SMEs. Now, the next one also that SMEs can do is that sale of assets. There's a lot of unutilized assets that we see in SMEs. Okay. Now, if they do sell this, if they do the selling, at least, you know, even at the loss, money is still coming in. You know, they can avoid the underutilization of the assets. You know, now in the balance sheet of the SMEs, what we found out was that there's a lot of fixed assets which is not utilized. Okay, not all the machines are being used. Therefore, it is important that if they let go these assets, at least it can provide some income to them. Okay, and it can show a better balance sheet for them, for the companies. Okay, now the next thing that they can do is that business such as agriculture, okay, agricultural business, restaurant business, okay, they have the flexibilities, okay, they have the capabilities, okay, to do a different packaging system, just like what I said just now. They repackage, they reproduct, they do a repricing. That means the pricing will be lower so that more customers can get. Okay. Now, the next one again is, since we are in the COVID era, you know, maybe they can reproducts into like hand sanitizers, okay, disinfectant products, so that it can reach the market demand for these products. Okay, so these are some of the issues that we can try to settle for SMEs. Okay, basically, the study that we did was that the gearing ratio of SMEs is high. Okay. Okay, I pass back to.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks for sharing with us a lot of good points. So I would like to actually ask your thought, your further thoughts on this. You have mentioned quite a couple of times about the loan, restructuring the loan, how the money is given out by the bank to assist all these SMEs. But as we all know, Prof, usually the very micro businesses, they are almost unbankable. Right? They don't get much because the bank is also a profit-driven organization. So it is very hard to make money by giving out loans to 1 million people with 5,000 micro financing, right? As versus a large SME company, a medium-sized one with 50 million. Just one is the same. It's almost the same effort they need to service this client. So, and as far as we know, and we've seen it many times, right? So every time when the government announced certain kind of financial aid through the commercial banks, usually the banks will offer it to their regular and good customers, those bankable ones, and mostly snap out very quickly, right? So can you share maybe one or two pointers on this, how to address this issue?
Okay. Number one, what the banks can do is that they can repackage the loans, like I said, into smaller amount with a lower interest rate. Now, the banks have to sacrifice somewhere over here. It is better for them to repackage the loans so that more customers can get the loan at a lower interest rates and extend the time period. They have to do this sacrifice during this COVID era. They can't be all the while on profit maximization motive. Okay, this is also in line with the government direction. Okay, number two, the banks themselves, they have to cooperate. Okay, they have to cooperate among them to come to an understanding, a mutual agreement among them about these SMEs, because if something happened to SMEs, it will still come back to the bank. They cannot make the money over there. Therefore, the banks, this is the time where they can start to look into each other again, cooperate among them in such a way that more loans can be given out, okay, less structural deficiencies over here, okay, so it will benefit them. It's no point for them to keep on being on the rigid side. They have to be more on the flexible side during this era. Okay,
Right.
and then the next one again, still on the documentation process. These are the complaints from the SMEs. The documentation is high. It's just too much for them to get the loans. So maybe over here, the banks can try to reduce or minimize the documentation process. This is very important.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Koong, so can you share with us and the audience further thoughts on this? Because this banking thing, this from the, is always when the issue is very hard to address, right? I mean, we all must also understand, like I have said many times, right? The banks is also a profit-driven organization, right? They have stock market, their shares price to actually need to perform as well. So how do they strike a balance on this?
In fact, I concur with Prof say, because many years ago, when we did a survey to the SME, a lot of the main problems is the getting loan with a lot of documentations. You know? But the other side of the coin, a lot of very small SME, you know, they also don't have a complete documentations. You know? In fact, maybe they are not a Senturian Bahat, they don't have a profit and loss and balance sheet for the bank to judge, you know. As far as now, pandemic, we can see we have been talking a lot to the bank negara and the commercial bank. So this moratorium, especially in talking about the individual P40, M40, and T20, and the micro businesses, they will give you an automatic, you know, that means you just call them automatic and give you the moratorium without any documentations. But now it comes forward to the SME. The SME also, they have committed the bank negara and the commercial banks. No documentation required. You just need to inform the bank, then the bank will let you sign a declaration form in order to ease the applications process in this respect. You know. Otherwise, a lot of documentations to apply. Then after 10 days of approving deadline, then I think a lot of SME will go bust to wait for these 10 days, you know, apart from documentations, all those things. I think they are doing this now. I think, yeah.
Okay, right.
It's more
Dato'
than
Azlin.
10 days, Mr. Koong. It's more than 10 days. Excuse me, can I interrupt? Another
Yes,
one more
please.
issue.
Sure.
Another one more issue is that most of the SMEs, we see that they are all in their systems or in their methods, in their processes of output of the products. So what they can do is that they can combine with fintech companies. This is a very good strategy where they can combine with fintech companies. These fintech companies will help in the marketing, in the process of getting the products being sold worldwide, which we see that a lot of the SMEs, they are still not collaborating with the fintech firms, maybe because of cost. But then again, cost, we can talk with the banks to restructure against the loan, okay? So that means the assignment of fintech companies, they come here into a very important role with the SMEs. This is a very good recommendation for the SMEs. And we see and we predict that once if they can combine with the fintech companies, okay, they can sell their products better and they can get to better customers. Okay, this is one recommendation.
Right. Okay. Good that Prof, you mentioned about fintech. So I'm going to stick to this fintech and ask Dato' Azlin, right? So because that's why we talk about this loan problem from the bank to whether big companies or small micro businesses. The problem is always about the documentation, right? If you get a loan of 5,000, but we need to present with tons of documentation, it's almost illogical. This is where the fintech needs to come about with digital banking license. So I've heard and I've seen like Axiata Group, they offer microfinancing from 1,000 to 3,000. We almost no documentation required, and they have a very good credit scoring system. So Dato Azlin, do you see this is a way forward, and how has been the development of this digital banking license that the Bank Negara, which suppose has made the announcement quite a while ago?
Okay, Wayne. Firstly, I'd like to comment on Professor Sohail's comment just now about banks need to sacrifice and have a shared burden and negotiate amongst themselves about how they're going to help the SMEs. You know, I think that's really a good one. You know, for the banks to sacrifice and have a shared burden with us. I think there's a very idealist view, but one, if we manage to do that, all right, that'd be very good for all of us, because I think all this while we've had all sorts of issues, you know, with the banks, and coming to documentation. All right, I think
yes, Dato, they have to somewhere sacrifice also, Dato.
No, they have to. No, of course, I agree with you. I agree with you fully, Prof. Right?
Somewhere.
But it seems a little bit, you know, because we've been trying to speak to them for ages, and we haven't got anywhere. So I'm just hoping that what you said will come through, you know, soon. Right? And actually, as regards the documentations, we ourselves have spoken to Bank Negara many times in all our dialogues to comment about the documentation. You know, because when we have these dialogues with all the banks, this was like maybe in October, November last year, when you know, a lot of the MSMEs were already very affected. You know, when we commented about the documents, you know, the banks still said that, you know, the number one thing on their list when it comes to approving loans and all that was business viability. All right, and we argued with them to say that what business viability are you talking about? You know, when we don't even know when this COVID is going to end, and you know, how the businesses are going to plan anything, and for that matter, even the banks don't know that. Right, so when somebody gives them a business plan, and for them to assess the business viability, how would they know? How would the banks know? But that was still on the number one on their list, you know, for you know, to approve the loans, and also all the documents that they wanted. Right. Of course, as I think Mr. Koong also said just now, I mean, our micro enterprises especially don't have, you know, these documents, and it is made more difficult actually for all SMEs because of the restriction in the movement. Right, when you have to chase for these documents here, there, and everywhere, and then, you know, it's a lockdown and all that. It's not that easy to compile those documents, which they may have, you know, but it's somewhere, or it needed to be completed. I mean, in a certain span of time, right? And I actually feel that yes, we need to look at either other ways of you know, financing, and I think fintech is a very good idea, but of course, it's not going to happen, you know, in the near future. As regards to what Wayne, you asked, you know, you said about the digital banking license and all that. Can you imagine how long that will take? You know, I mean, it's like you know, when you know, even if the license is announced, and how long it will, you know, they be operational to assist all the SMEs. You know, it's going to be a long while. Of course, if they start now, I mean, we'll get there someday. All right, but now I think it's very pressing that we help, you know, our MSMEs, you know, through these few months. You know, it's you know, because for all the things that we discuss, right? I mean, if we don't assist and just and ensure that the MSMEs survive this next few months, there'll be no point of doing anything, because a lot of them will be closed anyway. So I think it's important to address that. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So yeah, so I think we all kind of notice and reckon that some policy changes has been taken quite a while to be fine-tuned and actually reshape the policy to suit the current environment. I mean, let's talk about this loan documentation. I'm sure every one of us also aware that this been issue also. I mean, apart from the business loan, right? Even like us, personal mortgage for house, or hire purchase for car. I mean, you can buy a Rolls Royce or $1 million. You can transact it within few days. But if you buy a apartment or only a few $100,000, it takes months to transact. So in terms of value, dollars and cents, and also movable and immovable assets, so I'm sure a lot has to be done in this our financing policy. So okay, we have some good points from the audience. I will read it out shortly, and of course, we have also questions from Miss Linda. So, okay, we are all very concerned about the timeline, right? From the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the recovery, these phases, right? So what about today is still 11,000 COVID cases reported throughout the nation. So what about we are not able to cross from the phase 1 to the phase 2, especially for major states like Selangor and the rest. Will the government be able to come up with more stimulus package? That means more money, yeah, right? So we don't have a finance minister here, but okay, our distinguished panelists. So you got to speak the best of your ability. What do you think? Nah.
Okay, let me comment on this one. You see, if he wants to control the pandemic and then to spur the economy, I reckon the 70% of the government resources should control the pandemic. Because how good is the economy? The pandemic, I think the virus will kill the economy. But we cannot let the economy totally stop, and halted there. And then this will be detrimental to our economic mechanisms in the future. Let's look at that's not the questions. If we continue to be in such a way, I just wonder, is there any other stimulus packages will be coming out or not? Because we cannot continue to live on this one. You look at just now, my slide has shown the 9 stimulus packages back since 27th of February in 2020. 9 stimulus packages is already of 530 billion. And then the direct physical outflow is around 83 billion. 83 B. We cannot continue. Just let the pandemic worsen, then we come out another package. So the resources, I think, is limited. I think the government should control in respect of the pandemic 70% of resources, and then to me, the lockdown, either you are FMCO or EMCO, I think use until no alphabet to use anymore. Because they must really lock down and control this pandemic. And then the SOP must be in line, and then not to confuse every sector of the businesses with different SOP change here and there. So I think they must control, and then the stimulus packages, it must be targeted. It's not to say just come out of stimulus packages with a little bit of money, then you just split here and there. So must be targeted, as we mentioned just now, must help the micro businesses, SME, in order to not to have a bankruptcy, and then in order to retain the employee. Because when you retain the employee, that means you are giving a livelihood to the M40 and B40. Because B40 and M40 is a lot of SME worker, comprises about 48% of the workforce of Malaysia. And I think my comment is in such a way, you cannot continue in such a way, close, open, and then open, then close, then you have a stimulus packages. So I don't think so. We should work in such a way. Yeah.
Thanks. In view of time, to our panelists, so we are running out of time, but I'm going to borrow 5 minutes from the organizer, because we started 5 minutes late just now. So to wrap up the session, but interesting question we have here from Thomas. So because it looks like what Mr. Koong had mentioned is we got to live with this pandemic. I think in our neighboring country, Singapore, is no longer a pandemic, it's already an endemic, right? So a flu is a flu, but this is a very dangerous flu. So, but with 11,000 cases, so how are we going to able to declare this endemic instead of pandemic? I'm not too sure about this. So vaccine is something very, very important. So I want to hear from Dato Azlin, right? Because as far as I know, I've been getting feedback from SMEs. The government have initiated the PPV industries, the PICAS, but 4 sectors has been allowed to apply, starting with manufacturing, agriculture, construction, and retail. So to different various agencies. But upon my checking with MITI and the rest of the respective agency, in fact, the Ministry of Domestic Trade is even not ready. They are not approving retail sectors to vaccinate their employees. Vaccine is very crucial. All of us know about it, but the smaller businesses are not able to provide their employees with the vaccination appointment. Dato Azlin, what is your thought on this?
I think, of course, it's very important, and I think the solution to a lot of these things is for the, vaccination process to be done quickly. And but I think if we see for the last few weeks, right, it has speeded up a little bit, right, compared to before that, and in July, I heard that there's going to be 12 million vaccines or something, and there's going to be administered in July and all that. I think the speed has gone a little faster, and of course there's some initiatives like PICAS for the industries and all that. I think of course that's very important. It's a way to go, and for them to speed that up, and for the economy, all the sectors to be open. Right, and no more of these essential services and non-essential and all, because we are all in the same ecosystem. Right, I think they should do away with these essential services and all that. And as Mr. Koong said just now, right, these SOPs about, there's hundreds of SOPs to figure out, and every time something changes, we just don't know we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the SOP is. Right, so I think on top of all of the challenges that we have in our business, I think if all that can be streamlined, the SOPs, the opening up of the sectors, I think that will help a lot.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, we have a point raised by pointed out by Puan Sherin. So she also agreed, and she also add on this issue of documentation. She brought out a case, right? For instance, just for a simple 5,000 ringgit grant, the company need to raise the equivalent amount. Then the documentation is about 10 pages thick to the eligibility to raise 150,000 revenue, blah, 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 blah. So these are all the red tapes. So yeah, so lots needs to be done, and it has to be done very, very quickly. So before we wrap up the session, our three panelists, can you quickly, 30 seconds, last very important points to, again, the policy maker, government, the institution here. I mean, mainly we are talking about the banks and also the SMEs. Very quickly, 30-second pointers to them to take aware of what has to be done.
Yeah.
Who go first then?
Yeah. And anyone, come, Mr. Koong, start from you.
Okay, I reckon Malaysia now, with today, as you mentioned, Wayne, 11,000. I think the government have to set up a consultative committee or council, comprises of the private and then the business owner and the expert, in order to have joint collaborations to solve these problems. Not only the economy, the most important is to contain the pandemic, and then is to help our economy to spur and then give a confidence to the rakyat and the businesses, especially the FDI and the DDI per se, Yeah.
Thanks. Dato Azlin?
I think that as I said earlier, we must rescue the all the micro enterprises and the SMEs, which have been doing very well for this last to survive, this last 1.5 years. So to come up with some financing or funding or some kind of package for them to make sure that they survive through the times, and also maybe to look at the this thing as a whole, to see, to plan, to do some planning for the MSMEs as the way to go, how to go forward and to chart something for them, so that to guide them a little bit, because I'm sure they lost as well. So that kind of assistance from maybe MEDEC or something like that on the way forward would be very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Prof?
Mr. Wayne, one final emphasis is that we got two measures. One is the fiscal measures by the government, and the other one is the allocations of funds. Yes, our cases are rising to 11,000. Okay, so one thing is that the allocation of funds by the government to hospitals, to Medicare, should be higher in terms of getting more vaccines, in terms of upgrading the hospitals, upgrading the centers, the medical centers, because they won't lose anything. First thing, the COVID cases can be reduced by the higher allocations, by the higher vaccines purchasing, by the healthcare system. Overall, the healthcare system, the allocation should be higher, because again, they won't lose anything. And number two, we are looking at long term. It is not short term, it is long term. The thing that they can do to the hospital sector, it is a long-term process. That means there's nothing to lose if the government increase the allocation towards the medical sector.
Right. Okay. So this is a very good point, Prof. Thank you very much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end this session, this very engaging and enlightening session for our very important sectors, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Both three panelists and myself are easily available for you to reach out to, because with such a short time, we might not be able to help to answer more of your, or engage with you on more issues on MSMEs. Please reach out to us freely as you like, and I shall now hand over to the organizer. Thank you very much.